Hi everybody, this is Dan Stolebarger. Welcome to this week's KFIR Middle East Update. It is the week of May 9th, and let me say happy birthday, Israel. It's number 71, and that happens to fall on this very day. This week's been full with Holocaust Remembrance Day, of course, the fallen soldiers, remembrance as well, and today being the 71st birthday of Israel. So happy birthday, Israel. Some promos to begin with. We have a trip coming up to Israel, a tour. We call it Issachar, September 15th through the 24th. Check out our website at holygroundexplorations.com for more information on that tour. We still have some seats to fill. So pray about joining us. We're looking forward to sharing both the Israel of the Bible as well as the Israel of today with those of you who will be joining us. Musings for this week, but again, I've already mentioned the website, holygroundexplorations.com. Go there not only for the information on our tours, but PDF PowerPoint for the Middle East update. It's available on our site. You really want to get that because it accompanies this YouTube. There's much more information and photos in that with the PDF than, of course, just my face on the YouTube. So grab that and follow along. Start with musings. I'm going to state the obvious, but let this please sink in. Although a terror attack occurs in minutes, we must remember that it changes people's lives forever. This last week, close to 700 rockets were launched into Israel, and we must remember that, it's a staggering number, but each one of those rockets was launched with the intent to kill. It almost seems like it's a miracle that there were only 5 casualties, and it truly is. But let's not forget that phrase, only 5 casualties, because it must never be acceptable. The lives of 5 families have changed forever. And so, in this, there's going to be a couple articles on here that, if this happened to your country, how many rockets would you allow to come in before not just retaliating, but to put an end to this struggle that has taken place over the countless years. Unfallen Soldier Day, all of Israel comes to a complete stop. The sirens go off. It was on Wednesday morning. They observed 2 hours of silence, 2 minutes, not 2 hours. And again, you can see the numbers that are the fallen as well as those that are victims of terror. But as you see in those numbers, add 5. Let's not forget the 5 whose lives were just taken this last week due to 700 rockets being launched into Israel. Now, the ceasefire, the general feeling around Israel today concerning the ceasefire with Hamas is that it was an escalation that achieved nothing and a ceasefire that just will not hold. This summer, many are predicting the major escalation. Articles about, the one thing that we tracked a while back ago was this butcher of an Arab who raped and killed a teenage girl. And he was put aside for psychiatric evaluation, and I want to track this all the way through. But the psychiatric evaluation of Arafat, Irfaya, has come back, and he's been ruled mentally able to stand trial in Israel. If there was ever a time to reimpose the death sentence, it should be in this case. So we will continue to track this as it makes its way through the Israel court system. Interesting news from the U.S. The U.S. is willing to review its relationship now with any country that shows itself to be anti-Semitic in any part. And the question of continuing relationships with anti-Semitic countries is now on the table. We'll see what happens with that. And Jason Greenblatt, the White House Middle East peace envoy, he heightened the fact that the rocket attacks from Hamas really put a damper on even conceptually believing that there's any chance for a two-state solution to come into play here. Peace can only be built on truth and reality. Many pretend that, again, 700 rockets, give me a break. Do you want to recreate Gaza and Ramallah and give them the target of the airport? I mean, realistically, when we see these things happening, it pushes the concept of a two-state solution further and further away. As I mentioned, there's articles here. You can read this on your own. What would your country do? Comments from Nikki Haley, as well as Jason Greenblatt as well, regarding the rocket launching from Gaza, the Palestinian terrorists, and Nikki Haley's comments on what a double standard that's set up. There's also, I tried not to, but there's also an article from Tlaib and Omar and their side of it. And again, I find it interesting that Ilhan Omar, the Muslim congresswoman from Minnesota, her quote on this event with 700 rockets is, "The status quo of occupation and humanitarian crisis in Gaza is unsustainable." Occupation, Gaza? Get your facts right. Israel gave up Gaza years ago. They're not occupying Gaza. Once again, you can read that on your own. Major concern. They're serving on foreign councils and things such as that in our Congress. It's beyond belief for me. Interesting to find that the Saudis are siding with Israel. A quote, "Our hearts are with you." This is from the Saudis, the intellectuals, the journalists of Saudi Arabia. "Our hearts are with you. May Allah protect Israel and its people. We will not let the treacherous hand of Iran and its agents in Gaza reach the Israeli people. It's time that we say this out loud." So the Saudis making their alliances known with Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu once again is confirming the fact that the IDF will be conducting targeted killings or assassinations. So one that just took place was with, I think you say his name is al-Khodari, who was a money launderer for Iran, bringing money from Iran into Gaza. And you can see the photos here. Israel decided enough is enough, and one of their smart bombs took out his car. And so Netanyahu is making it clear that these targeted assassinations once again will come into play. Before we kind of wrap up, I believe that the smokescreen of Gaza was just that. It was, it's that old magician's trick of mirrors and smoke and look over here. Well, really the action is taking place on the opposite side. And I actually believe that Iran's sponsoring of Islamic Jihad in Gaza was behind all of these rockets that were going out, was a distraction. I think the reality is that that the U.S. and Iran are getting closer and closer to a realized conflict You can read this article that the U.S. Aircraft carrier, the Abraham Lincoln, has making its way into the Middle East. Again, with the sanctions that Trump's placed upon Iran, it's crippling them, and I have a feeling that we're going to see some military action between the U.S. and Iran in the not too distant future. I think that's the reality behind all those rockets being launched at the particular time that they were launched. Michael Orion, former MK, member of Knesset, suggested on Twitter that right after our holidays, right after Eurovision, Israel must evict Hamas from Gaza, and the U.S. should back Israel militarily. It's time to act. It's time to rid the Gaza of Hamas once and for all. Again, I think that that is a common thread that's running throughout Israel today. Unfortunately, we're kind of out of time. A couple articles. One is a mayor of Jordan is coming under fire because of his treatment of Israeli Jews. And again, on paper, Jordan's kind of listed as a peace partner or whatever, but in reality, there's not so much true. You can read that article. The one highlight I had is that when we talk about this two-state solution, the reality is that in order to achieve peace with Israel, Arabs and Muslims need to start preparing their people for peace and not inciting them against Israel. And that's exactly what's going on, and that's what this article details. We talked about the Instagram account last week that had to do with what if Instagram was around during the time of the Holocaust. And I find it interesting that this account that brings to life the diary of a young Holocaust victim is now garnered over, are you ready for this, 120 million views in the last week. 120 million views, 1.3 million followers. Read that on your own. And then for me, I've always thought the world of Carolyn Glick, one of the chief editors of the Jerusalem Post, and her name is being sort of put forth as a possible candidate to replace Danny Danon as the Israeli ambassador for the UN. Boy, that would be great as far as I'm concerned. And so, again, that's this week's update. Check it out, share it with your friends, and obviously, happy birthday, Israel, and remember as believers that we need to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Shalom.